Good morning, good afternoon, good night, whatever time it is where you are. Today I want to talk about present levels of performance in individualized education plans. These are things for students with special needs. Present levels of performance are an annual requirement for an IEP, so I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about it for people who are a little bit less familiar with special education. It explains a student's functioning. It includes things like, what can they do? What do they struggle with? Why might they be struggling? And what strategies might help the student? Usually in IEPs, we do present levels of functioning for math, functioning in math like word problems, integers, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, linear equations when they get to high school, geometry, depending on whatever class they're in. We try to explain how they're doing in math. We look at their reading and comprehension, things like decoding, phonemic awareness if they're younger. We also look at reading comprehension, sentence, can they read at grade level, things like that. We look at oral language, can they express what they want to say? Can they understand what we are saying? And lastly, we look at their writing ability. The thing about present levels of performance is they are often written very badly. They're not measurable, they're not observable, they're not specific to the student. All three of these things need to be there in order to create an appropriate present level of performance for a student. We're going to take a little bit of time to look at what you should not be doing in a present level of performance. Here's a math present level of performance that I just made up about a fictional student named Johnny. First, this teacher says Johnny does not regularly complete homework. While this might be important to understand and it might fit in somewhere, it doesn't fit in the present level of performance because a present level needs to be specific, measurable, and observable. And we can't observe Johnny at home. So we need to make sure we're describing things that we see in the classroom and not what we're not seeing, like at home or in any other situation. Next thing this teacher does is they wrote the word that he displays lazy behavior in class. Lazy is not measurable or observable. It's a social construct, and it's something that we need to be careful not to use in an IEP. Also, they talk about that he does not have much motivation. Again, motivation is something that might look different in different students. Some students might look motivated, some students might not look motivated, but a lot of these things can be influenced by other social or cultural factors, and we need to make sure that we're not using this language in an abusive way. The next thing is that it says that Johnny does not complete classwork and is often seen talking to his friends. Of course, we can always mention that he's not doing certain things, but in this case, it's written from a deficit point of view, saying that he does not complete his work, but it doesn't give us any of the 5 who, what, where, when, why. It's not explaining anything about Johnny. The teacher can't do anything with that when they read this, okay? Next, it says that he's talking to his friends, which is a behavior, which we can talk about behaviors, but it probably wouldn't fall under the math section to talk about this. Again, here he uses the word unmotivated. We shouldn't use that word necessarily unless we're being very careful with what we're saying. And lastly, again, they say what he cannot do. He says he does not write down his math notes, and he tends to get angry if a teacher asks him to write stuff down. Again, this doesn't explain why or for what reason. It's a little too vague. So now what we're going to do is look at a better example here. Okay? In this example here, we see that Johnny's math teacher gives homework 2 times per week. This is something that a parent or provider can look at and understand, okay, I know that Johnny's going to have homework twice a week. We can help him with that, and that's a good thing to know. Also, it tells you what the student needs in the class. It says he needs a notebook. So again, the teacher is being specific about what Johnny needs to be successful in his math class. He's describing what a general education student might have or do in the class, okay? Next, it says it uses positive instead of deficit language. It says what he can do. He regularly participates in class with short responses, okay? And then even though here we say that Johnny will not begin work, it says until. So we're giving an example of a positive reinforcement. He will not do work until a teacher is working with him in a one-on-one setting. So again, instead of just saying what he can't do, we're trying to explain how to get him to do the work. Next, and this part is probably the most important, is we describe what he is actually able to do. So often in IEPs, I do not see teachers describing what a student can actually do. In this case, it says he's able to use a variety of strategies to manipulate and consider different relational quantities, blah, blah, blah. These things are important to know so that we can know what Johnny can already do. Next, of course, it talks about what he needs support in. So, and this is a very well delineated IEP because it says what he's able to do, and then it goes straight into what he needs support in. He needs support reviewing place value and adding and subtracting 2-digit numbers. And it says that he needs help identifying the correct order of steps to complete multi-step problems. So they're giving specific things of what he needs help on. The next thing, though, is oftentimes we just say what he needs support in, but we don't say, how we can give that support or what that support might look like. And so in this case, we say Johnny has shown a need for. So we're describing what he needs. So although he needs support in these different skill areas, what he actually needs is not the skills themselves. He needs someone to help him learn how to do these skills. And in this case, it says he needs explicit teaching in the sequential ordering of multi-step equations. And it also says he has a tendency to mix up numbers along with inconsistently being able to describe numbers above 1,000. These are all things that can help us understand why he needs support and how to give him that support. And lastly, we give explicit reasons of what he might benefit from. For instance, he might benefit from differentiated instruction, high contrast materials, limited visual clutter, and I wrote that twice. Ignore that. And he needs support during independent practice to make sure he's participating in small groups. So in order to write an IEP like this, and in order to get your teachers to start writing IEPs in this way, I've created this teacher document that we're going to look at here. It's an Excel file. Well, it's actually a Google Sheets file that allows teachers to work through this systematically for all students. Let's go ahead and look at it now. So in this example here, if you look down at the bottom, there's a math teacher report here. That's the page we're on right now. And at the top, there's the teacher's name, the student's name, gender pronouns, and so forth. And then in this column here, there's some questions that the teacher can answer. And then you can put your answers over here on the box. For some question, there's just one answer needed here. You can see there's one answer. And I blacked out the other ones because there's really only, like, how many days a week do you give homework? There's only one answer to that. Whereas some questions, like what are some of the student's strengths, you can give up to 3 answers with the first one being required here. Now, the reason I switched to this from Google Forms is because Google Forms is very static and you can't really manipulate very much in terms of real-time stuff. So here, the way this works is there's a math teacher report. And then here there's also a literacy report, which an English or a social studies teacher might fill out. And then these other 2 columns, the math QV and the English QV, these are just possible answers that teachers can give. They wouldn't look at these 2 pages. And then over here is the final report, the math, reading, and writing. We're going to look at that in a second after we've finished this part. So let's just go ahead and try and answer these questions as how many days a week do you give homework? So over here, there's a little arrow that you can click. You can click here, and there's some possible answers here. And let's just say 3 for the sake of it. And now when you go to the final report over here and you click on it, final report, it now starts off, the report already says, Johnny's math teacher stated that they give homework 3 times per week and that Johnny is, and we haven't finished this part yet, we're going to finish that right now. And so it says that's the next question. How do students take notes in your class? So here, the lovely part of this is they can choose one of these answers. Your teachers can choose one of these answers, like it says required to have a notebook each day, required to bring a folder each day, required to bring a packet each day. But let's say a teacher has a binder and they really want to use the word binder. You could just use this sentence starter. It says student is. And so instead of using one of the 3 pre-populated answers, we could just type in So here we just wrote that they're required to have a 3-ring binder with dividers. And let's say that's what they're required. Hit enter. And now this custom answer has been posted in the final report where it says that the thing about 3 times per week and Johnny is required to have a 3-ring binder with dividers. Next question says, which best describes a student's participation in your class? Let's just go with a common one. I'm going to say he does not participate in class. Okay, we're just going to use that one. So now when I go to the final report, it says his math teacher reports that he does not participate in class. So we've got that down. Next one, which of the following best describes the student's comprehension levels? Let's see. Let's say he will not begin working until a teacher is working with them in a 1-to-1 setting. But the nice thing about this is if a teacher wants to add something in here, they could just write and. And let's say they want to add that in. Let's say they want to add in and does well with the warm-up if the second teacher in the room asks leading questions. So now when I go over here, that's now in there as well. It does well, and a teacher with leading questions. This next part's a little bit magic. Let's say it says what are his strengths. So we'll say that he's able to add, subtract 1 digits. And let's say that he's also able to use a number line. So those 2 things here. So you go to the report now. It says that he's able to independently add and use a number line to add and subtract integers. So it automatically puts those two together. And if you add in a third one, if you add a third answer in, the grammar will automatically correct itself. And now the and is here with the and describe, and they just put a comma here instead. So you can see the grammar is all done for you. And if we go through and just answer all of these questions, I'm just going to put one answer for these. You don't have to answer all three all the time. That would be a lot. But let's just say that he needs targeted direct math instruction. And then lastly, the teacher could also write something like Johnny is great when he participates and is on task. And all that's there, and we're good. If you are making this report for yourself and you have an answer that you know you're going to be putting in here a lot, like let's just say that he participates if they are warned ahead of time. So let's say that's an answer you want to always have there. Now you click there. When we go down here, you can see the answer now is here. To participate if they are warned ahead of time. Click over here. And it says his math teacher reports that he participates if they are warned ahead of time. Now that's not a great sentence written there. It's not like a great sentence yet, but you could work on these and really form them to whatever your school needs, okay? Same thing here with literacy. If we go through and answer some of these questions, let's say they give homework 3 times a week. Let's say the student needs a packet each day. They are able to write simple sentences. Let's say that they can edit and revise their work. And that they need help with conventional formats. And you can see here when we go over here to the final report now in the writing section now, they've started putting all this information in. So if you send this out to your teachers, you could just make a copy of this document and edit it to the way that you want it to look if you're the special ed teacher. And you could send this out to your general ed or your other special ed teachers and have them work through this. And you guys could do your own question validation where you put in your own answers and your report will pop out here, just like this. The only issue that's not as good as Google Forms is that this can obviously break if a teacher doesn't know what they're doing. So just require you to maybe make a video like I did or something to try and help teachers use this. And I hope this is helpful for you and your school. Thank you.